vamwe chete, kuburikidzana mweya mutsvene, chitibatanidzai murudo rwenyu. Chivei nemudzidzisi wedu achatidzidzisa mangwanani ano. Zvese zvatichadzidza tangatishuwa kuti dai zvingatibatsira mukurarama kwedu kwatiri kuita mazuva ano ekupedzisira. She tibatsirei, mutirwire pane wakaipa, musatirega tichipinda pane zvinotiedza. Tinongokumbira Mwari mutigadzire tafura pamberi pavadzivisi vedu. Mazvite henyu mangwanani ano tine vana vatinavo, tese semhuri imwe chete, chitiitirai zvakanaka kubva mangwanani ano kusvika zuva richinonyura reSabata, muchitikomborera, muchitiitire zvakanaka. Mbiri nerukudzo tozvidzosera muzita rinogara nokusingaperi. Amen.
Amen. Okay.
Thank you, Sibusisiwe. Before Aaron begins, we've got a song, special song from Kadoma Fellowship.
Aaron asati atanga tine rwiyo rwachapiwa nefellowship yeKadoma.
So Kadoma Fellowship, you can begin anytime. Thank you.
Saka vekuKadoma munogona kutanga henyu kuimba anytime.
From the far of every blessing, turn my heart to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy, ever ceasing, almost around endless grace. Teach me how to adore thee. Goodness, once more, endless glory, fill my heart with joy and love. Be thy grace, my Ebenezer, in the night thy I've come. In thy hope, by thy good pleasure, please, thy before. Jesus, help me, my stranger, wandering for love to fall. Give to grace to me from danger, in the His precious blood. Oh, to grace from greater danger, let me come for strength to thee. Let thy goodness like a better unto one that Lord thy feeling, unto one that Lord thy love. Yes, Lord, take and seal it for thy own Father.
Thank you, Kadoma Fellowship, for that wonderful hymn. Aaron, I think we'll hand over to you now to begin. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for inviting me here today.
Maita basa munhu wese nekundikoka kuno nhasi.
Happy Sabbath.
Sabata rakanaka.
My name's Aaron Sen,
Zita rangu ndi Aaron Sen,
and I'm the Bible worker
ndini Bible worker wekuno ku-IPR.
for IPR in America.
Ndini Bible worker we-IPR kuno kuAmerica.
Did I lose you? Say it again. I'm part of this initiative because I used to believe November the 5th was the Sunday law.
Ndiri mumwe weinitiative iyi nekuti ndaimbotenda kuti November 5 ndiyo yaiva Sunday law.
But I've dropped November 5th now. It wasn't sustainable.
Asi handichaiti November 5 izvezvi.
And now I believe July 18th was the Sunday law.
Iye zvino izvi ndakutenda kuti July 18 ndiyo yaiva Sunday law.
I forgot to say, please just shout out any questions.
Ndakanganwa kuti kana muine mubvunzo chingo unmute mungotaura.
Or if you want me to repeat something, just interrupt, shout out.
Kana muchida kuti ndidzokorodze chimwe chinhu munongopindira munongodaidzira.
Okay. I'll give you just a quick, brief explanation as to why I switched.
Ndichakupai tsanangudzo ipfupi yekuti nemhaka yei ndakachinja.
So I was saying that January the 6th points to November the 5th.
Inini ndaimboti January 6 inonongedzera kuNovember 5.
I used to say attack on democracy January 6th.
Ndaiti paya paiatakwa democracy musi waJanuary 6.
Fall of democracy November 5th when they vote in a known dictator.
Democracy ichizodonha musi waNovember 5 pavanovhotera umwe dictator.
And the main evidence I used to back that up
Umboo hwandaiva nahwo huri main hwekutsigira izvozvo
was the mark of the beast.
hwaiva hwemark of the beast.
And I should say the mark of the beast test.
Ndinofanira kuti test yemark of the beast.
I said voting for Trump is receiving the mark of the beast.
Inini ndakati kuvhotera Trump ndiko kugamuchira mark of the beast.
And none of the other dates had people doing anything.
Sorry, Aaron, can you come again? None of the other dates?
I said none of the other dates had the people doing anything.
Hapana
The
rimwe
ordinary-
pamadates mamwe ese hapana hapana mamwe dates aiva nechaitwa nevanhu ipapo.
So that's why I was so convinced about November the 5th.
Ndosaka ndakanga ndakanyanya kumwirira paNovember 5.
Because I used to say, how do people get the mark of the beast
Nekuti ndaimboti ko vanhu vanowana sei mark of the beast
on July 18th or January 20 or whatever?
pana July 18 kana January 20 kana mamwe madates ariko.
And Elder Terry answered.
Elder Terry vakapindura.
I didn't hear. Elder Terry answered that recently.
Elder Terry vakazvipindura izvozvo manje manje.
Which basically destroyed my main evidence.
Ndizvo zvakazotswanya evidence yandandinayo ikuru.
She said the National Sunday Law is the mark of the beast waymark.
Vakati National Sunday Law ndiyo waymark yemark of the beast.
But the people don't get tested until they've heard all the lights of the message.
Asi vanhu havatestwi kusvikira vanzwa light rese remessage iyoyo.
Which would be loud cry.
Zvinovapa loud cry.
And then the people are tested.
Vanhu ndopavanochizotestwa.
So they're not tested at the Sunday Law or mark of the beast way.
Saka havatestwi paSunday Law kana kuti pawaymark iroro remark of the beast.
And without going into detail here, that made a lot of sense to me.
Tisina hedu kuzopinda mudetail, inini zvakandimekera sense.
And also in the last few weeks, Elder Terry answered some other questions I had. about July 18th.
Zvakare mumavhiki mashoma apfuura, Elder Terry vakatopindura mimwe mibvunzo yakawanda yandandinayo yaJuly 18.
Exactly who the seventh head is,
Kuti ndiani chaizvo chaizvo ari seventh head
and things like that.
nezvimwe zvakadaro.
Okay, I'll move on to the study, but any questions or thoughts so far?
Ndofambira mberi kuenda kuchidzidzo. Pana ane pfungwa dzainadzo here kana mibvunzo?
Okay, so today I'm going to go from the perspective of the death of the king of the south.
Saka izvezvi ndichatarisa nemuono wekufa kwaking of the south.
And I'm saying it identifies a Sunday law.
Ndiri kuti zvinotinongedzera Sunday law.
But you know it's not this national Sunday law.
Asi tinoziva kuti haisiriyo iyi national Sunday law.
Because this is already in the past, July 18.
Nekuti itori kumashure, July 18.
Okay, now we've always taught in this movement, hold on, let's just say until now, in this movement, we have taught
Ngatiti kusvikira izvinezvi mumovement ino takanga tichidzidzisa
that the death of the king of the south is just one complete and final death.
kuti kufa kwaking of the south anongofa ka1 zviri complete ndo magumo ake.
I know we've taught deadly wound then death.
Takadzidzisawo zvakare kuti anoreceiva ronda rinouraya ozofa.
But the death is just a one stage death.
Asi kufa kwacho taingoti anongofa ipapo ipapo zvisina mastage.
Oh, sorry, I should let me introduce the board work. Sorry, I've got to step back a bit.
Ndinoda kudzokera mumashure zvishoma, ndina kuintroducei kune zvandakanyora paboard.
Okay, you remember Elder Terry, I think, in Fiji.
Kana muchirangarira Elder Terry kuFiji.
She presented the lines of pagan Rome, papal Rome, and modern Rome.
Vakapresenta maline epagan Rome, papal Rome, nemodern Rome.
I haven't included the line of papal Rome here.
Apa handina kunyora line repapal Rome.
Just because I'm not going to be using it or drawing any applications.
Nekuda kuti handisi kuzenge ndichirishandisa, handina maapplication andiri kuita naro.
And when I say modern Rome,
Pandinoti modern Rome,
we know that Rome or the papacy has nothing to do with end time events.
tinoziva kuti Rome kana kuti papacy hainei nechekuita nezviitiko zvemagumo enyika.
So I'm only using that term because that was the old model.
Saka ndikungoishandisa iyi nekuti ndo yanga iri model yekare.
Pagan Rome, papal Rome, modern Rome.
Pagan Rome, papal Rome, then modern Rome.
But it might be more correct to say the king of the north.
Zvinogona kunge zviri correct zvakanyanya kuti king of the north.
And very simply put, the king of the north is going to be America.
Tichingozvitaura nenzira iri nyore, king of the north anenge ari America.
Or more precisely, since 1989, the Republican Party.
Kana tichida kunyatso kuti nemo kubva 1989 inenge iri Republican Party.
Okay, so on the line of pagan Rome,
Saka paline repagan Rome,
this could be taken from Daniel 8:9.
izvi zvinogona kutorwa kubva kubhuku raDaniel 8:9.
And it basically says that Rome takes down 3 geographic areas.
Inongotiudza kuti Rome inodonedza mageographical area matatu.
1, 2, 3, before it rules the world supremely.
Isati yatanga kutonga nyika zvizere.
And it rules for a time, 360 years.
Inotonga kwenguva inova 360 years.
So those 3 territories in Daniel 8:9 are the east,
Nzvimbo idzi kubva kuna Daniel 8:9 anotanga nekueast,
when Syria was taken down,
paya pakatorwa nzvimbo yeSyria
64 BC.
mugore ra64 BC.
And when Rome takes Syria, they become the king of the north.
Rome painotora Syria ndo paanobva ava king of the north,
Which is a really easy way to show you
inova nzvimbo iri nyore yekukuratidzai
that the king of the north was born here in 1989.
kuti king of the north akazvarwa pano apa pana 1989.
And then they take down the pleasant land,
Vanozodhiritsawo pleasant land,
which is the same as the glorious land,
zvakangofanana nekuti glorious land,
in 63 BC.
mugore ra63 BC.
So you can see why that would line up with the glorious land being taken in Daniel 11.
Ndosaka muchizoona zvichizonangana neglorious land ichizotorwa muna Daniel 11.
Daniel 11:41, he enters into the glorious land.
Daniel 11:41 anopinda munzvimbo yeglorious land,
America.
America.
And then the third area to be taken down
Nzvimbo yechitatu inozotorwa
is the south,
ndiyo south,
which is Egypt.
inova iyo Egypt.
Okay. So that's that line which is lined up with our lines.
Ndiro line iri patinorinanganisa neline redu iri.
And Elder Terry has already put in place
Elder Terry vakatoisa nechekare panzvimbo
the worldwide Sunday law at Daniel 12:1.
worldwide Sunday law pana Daniel 12 ndima ya1.
And that's also been established truth since the beginning. I think it's common Adventism.
Ichi chokwadi chakatoestablishwa kubva pekutanga. Ndofunga kuti ingori Adventism inongozikamwa.
Okay, any thoughts?
Pana ane pfungwa dzainadzo here?
Okay, so Elder Jeff taught
Saka Elder Jeff vakadzidzisa
from Daniel 11:14.
kubva kuna Daniel 11:40 kusvika 45
that this is 1991
kuti apa ndi 1991
and the death of the king of the south
rufu rwaking of the south
was here 1989 to 1991.
rwaiva ipapa pana 1989 kusvika 1991.
And then the next verse 41,
Ndima inozotevera ndima ye41
is the national Sunday.
ndiyo national Sunday law.
And Jeff taught that this was the complete and final death of the king of the south, Russia.
Elder Jeff akati uku ndokufa zvachose kwekupedzisira kwaking of the south, Russia.
So I'll put complete there for now.
Saka ndichaisa kuti kufa zvizere kwaizvezvi.
But we know that Elder Tess, I'll say corrected it.
Asi tinozoziva kuti Elder Tess vakazozvigadzirisa.
Elder Tess says history repeats.
Elder Tess vakati nhoroondo inodzokorodza.
And that anium is the deadly wound.
Zvakare kuti panium ndiro ronda rinouraya.
And then at the national Sunday law, you get the death of the king of the south.
Patinozosvika paNational Sunday law ndipo panozofa king of the south.
So she's saying this history repeats.
Saka vaiti ivo nhoroondo iyi inodzokorodza.
And the way Elder Tess taught it
Nzira yazvakadzidziswa nazvo naElder Tess
is that this would be the complete and final death of the king of the south.
Ndeyekuti uku ndiko kufa zvachose kwekupedzisira kwaking of the south.
Okay, all good so far? Any
Ah,
thoughts, questions?
Zvakanaka here so far? Pana ane pfungwa dzainadzo here kana mibvunzo?
Okay, so now I'd like to compare and contrast this king of the south with the king of the north.
Ezvinoda kuda kufananidza nekusiyanisa king of the south.
King of the south with the king of the north.
King of the south na king of the north.
So Daniel 11:41.
Saka Daniel 11 ndima ya41.
King of the north enters into the glorious land.
King of the north anopinda muglorious land.
Now, in the most simple terms,
Nenzira dziri nyore nyore.
so simple that it's technically wrong.
Zviri nyore zvakadaro zvekuti technically zvinenge zviri wrong.
But just to make this point, I'm going to say
Asi kuti ndingoburitsa pfungwa iyi ndichataura ndichiti
that the king of the north is America.
King of the north iAmerica.
And the glorious land is America.
Glorious land zvakare iAmerica.
So how does America defeat America? Doesn't seem to make sense.
Saka America inokunda sei America? Zvinoita kunge zvisingamake sense.
How does America overthrow itself?
America inozvikunda sei pachezvayo?
So basically that would be an internal victory.
Saka kunenge kuri kuzvikunda kubva mukati.
Internal, inside the United States.
Mukati me-United States.
That's not a new concept to us.
Idzi hadzisi pfungwa nyuwani kwatiri.
In the words of Elder Tess,
Mumazwi aElder Tess,
it would be civil war.
yaidaidzwa ichinzi civil war.
Or revolution, counter-revolution.
Kana kuti revolution ne-counter revolution.
Or war on the Western Front.
Kana hondo ku-Western Front.
So now we know. Sorry, start again. So at Sunday law, you get an internal victory for the king of the north.
Saka paSunday law unowana internal victory ya-king of the north.
Internal victory. King of the north. Is that clear? Any questions?
Zvakajeka here? Pane mibvunzo here? Aaron, so we are saying the king of the north is the Republican Party, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Saka ndabvunza kuti tiri kuti king of the north ndiyo Republican Party here? Akati hongu.
I think that's something Elder Terry figured out, and I think she's presented that already.
Izvi zvakatsanangurwa naElder Terry vakatozvipresenta nechekare.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey.
Sorry, you'd need to repeat Justina's questions because those on the English channel can't hear her.
Okay, so Justina
So if you can repeat
said
after Justina.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So Justina asked, is it correct that the king of the north is the Republican Party? And I think that's correct. It's quite new, but I think I'm right in saying that. I hope so. Okay, so carry on.
So Justina abvunza kuti king of the north zviri correct here kuti Republican Party. Zvikanzi ndofunga zviri correct. Zvichiri zvitsva but ndofunga zviri correct.
Okay, so we've taught since the beginning of the movement.
Saka takadzidzisa kubva pakutanga kwemovement.
And I think it's just common Adventism, because Ellen White says this.
Ndofunga kuti ingori Adventism yatinoziva tese nekuti Ellen White akadzidzisa izvozvi.
At first, Sunday laws passed in America.
Kuti Sunday law inotanga yapasiswa kunzvimbo yeAmerica.
And I'm using Ellen White, so I mean the 1888 model.
ndiri kushandisa zvaitaurwa naEllen White saka ndiri kutaura model ya1888.
Literal Sunday law versus Sabbath.
Sunday law iyaya yaiva yeSabata versus svondo.
And then it gets passed country by country until it's passed in every country of the world.
Then nyika nenyika dzaizoipasisa kusvikira nyika dzese dzapasisa Sunday law iyoyo.
And then we used to place the universal Sunday law at Daniel 12.
Taizoisa universal Sunday law pana Daniel 12:1.
Or we'll call it the worldwide Sunday.
Kana kuti toidaidza tichiti worldwide Sunday law.
So the king of the north takes down 3 geographic areas before it rules the world supremely.
Saka king of the north anodhiridza mageographical area matatu asati atanga kutonga ega zvizere.
And at the worldwide Sunday law, that's just the beginning of the 7th head ruling the world.
Worldwide Sunday law ndokutanga kwe7th head ichitonga nyika yese.
So here you had the internal victory for the king of the north inside America.
Saka apa unowana kuwina kwemukati kwa king of the north mukati meAmerica.
Which means here you have an external victory for the king of the north.
Zvoreva kuti apo panongedzerwa une kuwina kwa king of the north kwekunze.
At Daniel 12:1.
Pana Daniel 12 ndima ya1.
External because it's all the other countries outside of America.
External kureva dzimwe nyika dziri kunze kweAmerica.
Okay, so you could call the external victory a complete victory.
So anogona kuti kuwina kwekunze uku kuwina kuzere.
So once you've taken down all the countries of the world, there's no more countries to take down.
Kana watopamba nyika dzese dziri pasi tenderera pasina imwe nyika yekuchapamba zvakare.
So the external victory is a complete.
Saka kuwina kwekunze uku kuwina kuzere.
So we said we're comparing the king of the north with the king of the south.
Saka tati tikufananidza king of the north na king of the south.
Now you can see this compare and contrast is starting to break down. It's not working.
Maakutotanga kuona kuti kufananidza nekusiyanisa kwakutanga kutodhirika hakusi kushanda.
Because here Elder Tess said this is the complete death of the king of the south.
Nekuti apa Elder Tess vakati ndokufa kuzere kwa king of the south.
By the way, I should have crossed this out because this is wrong here. That's not the complete death of the king of the south.
Apa ndaichifana kucheka izvi nekuti zviri wrong nekuti hapasipo panofa king of the south zvachose.
So Elder Tess taught the complete death of the king of the south at National Sunday law.
Saka Elder Tess vakadzidzisa kufa zvachose kwa king of the south pa National Sunday law.
But when you compare and contrast with the king of the north,
asi paunofananidza nekusiyanisa na king of the north,
you can see the complete victory comes at Daniel 12:1.
unoona kuti kuwina zvachose kunouya pana Daniel 12 ndima ya1.
So does it make sense that the complete death of the king of the south should actually come at Daniel 12:1?
Saka zvinomeka sense here kuti kufa zvizere kwa king of the south kunofana kuunzwa pana pa
Hello, Aaron.
Sunday law. Pana nemubvunzo?
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I have a question.
Libert ane mubvunzo.
I watched your recent studies pertaining to the king of the south.
Ndakaona dzidziso yako yawakapedzera kuita maererano nekufa
And
kwa
it
king
was
of
in
the
the
south.
context of November the 5th, of course, but now we no longer have that date.
Kwaiva mucontext
And you were talking
November
of
5 asi hausisina date
the
iroro.
spheres of influence of the king of the south being taken one by one. Or at least
Waitaura
the king of the south was losing these spheres of influence in a progressive fashion. And
What?
you identified Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Syria.
Waitaura maspheres of influence, a king of
So
the
my
south
question is,
achitorwa one by
which
one.
history
Pana Hamas.
does that loss
Liberty,
belong to
please
now?
can you pause between your sentences because Justina is translating.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So my question was, or is,
Mfunzo wangu ndewekuti.
to which waymark now does that history of loss of the spheres of influence by the king of the south belong to?
Tinoisa papi pawaymark ripi kurasikirwa kunoitwa
To
na
the
king
nation
of
of
the
Sunday
south
law or
maspheres
to
of
the
influence.
worldwide Sunday law?
Tinoisa here pa-national Sunday law kana kuti
Yeah,
pa-worldwide
that's
Sunday law. Ndo mubvunzo wangu.
Okay. Do I need to repeat the question in English? Did
Yes,
everyone
please.
hear it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we're asking, where is the loss of the spheres of influence for the king of the south?
Saka ari kufunza kuti panorasikirwa na king of the south nemaspheres of influence ake tinopaisa papi.
If we're about to teach that there's a two-stage death for the king of the south,
Ini ndanda kutodzidzisa kuti pane mastage maviri ekufa kwa-king of the south.
then at which stage does the king of the south lose all its spheres of influence?
Saka king of the south anorasikirwa nemaspheres of influence ake papi, pastage ipi?
Okay, really good question.
Uyu mubvunzo wakanaka.
So I'm just going to finish this compare and contrast, and that's actually exactly where I'm going to go.
Saka ndichangopedzisa kufananidza nekusiyanisa uku kwawabvunza ndokwandanda kuenda.
You mentioned all the loss of the Middle Eastern proxies.
Wataura kurasikirwa nemaproxy ese ekumiddle east.
And I'll cover that as well.
Ndichazotaurawo zvakare nezvazvo.
Okay. So this compare and contrast is starting to break down.
Saka kufananidza nekusiyanisa uku kwakutanga kutodhirika nechekare.
You've got the complete victory for the king of the north here.
Une kuwina kuzere kwa-king of the north pano apa.
Elder Tess taught the complete death of the king of the south was here.
Elder Tess vakadzidzisa kuti kufa kuzere kwa-king of the south kwakuri pano apa.
And we have a clue as to what kind of death is actually at National Sunday Law.
Tine clue yekuti kufa kwemhando ipi kuripo pa-national Sunday law.
Because this is an internal victory for the king of the north.
Nekuti uku kuwina kuri internal kwa-king of the north.
So using parable methodology, compare and contrast,
Kana tichishandisa parable methodology kufananidza nekusiyanisa.
you can see this should just actually be the internal death of the king of the south.
Unogona kuchiona manje kuti uku kufa internally kwa-king of the south.
So I'm going to change complete to internal.
Saka ndaakudzima complete ndochiisa inini internal.
And Elder Terry's already put that in place.
Elder Terry vakatozviisa panzvimbo izvi.
She says that was the death of Navalny.
Vakati ivo ndokwaiva kufa kwaNavalny.
Navalny. Now you can see this fits correctly.
May you come again, please?
Now you can see this waymark fits correctly.
Okay. Zvino taakuchiona kuti waymark iri raakuchikwana zvakanaka manje.
And the concept of an internal death, the king of the south, is not new.
Pfungwa yekufa internally kwa-king of the south haisi itsva.
It's when Elder Tess talked about it,
Elder Tess pavakadzidzisa nezvazvo.
she would present glasnost and perestroika.
vakataura nezveglasnost neperestroika zvekuRussia.
She would refer to those internal protests within the Soviet bloc.
Vachitaura nemaprotests aya aiva mukati meSoviet bloc.
Which led to the death of the King of the South in 1991.
Akazotisvitsa kufa kwaKing of the South 1991.
And from memory, I think it was 20.
I'm back, Aaron. I think my network had dropped. Yeah, I just had from memory. Then that's when it dropped.
So, from memory, I think it was 2019.
Kubva mutangaro ndofunga kuti yairi 2019.
When Elder Paminda said,
Elder Paminda pavakati,
King of the South kills itself.
King of the South anozviuraya.
King of the North says to the King of the South,
King of the North anoti kuna King of the South,
hey, King of the South, here's a sword.
Yes, King of the South, pane nyaya.
Why don't you kill yourself?
Ko unodi kuzvisungirira?
King of the South says, okay, and kills itself.
King of the South uvati, all right, ubva azviuraya.
So an internal death of the King of the South is nothing new.
Saka kufa mukati King of the South hachisi chinhu chitsva.
We've just never made any application of it.
Hatina kumbobvira takaita application yazvo.
And never revisited it.
Hatina kuzombobvira takaidzokorodza zvakare.
Until now, when Elder Terry said it was the death or murder of Navalny.
Kusvikira izvezvi Elder Terry pavakazoti kwaiva kufa kwaNavalny.
I'll just wait for Justina to come back.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's an internal death of the King of the South at the National Sunday Law,
Kana paine internal death ya King of the South pa National Sunday Law,
there must be an external death of the King of the South at Daniel 12:1.
panofanira kunge paine external death ya King of the South pa National Sunday Law.
Which then lines up with the external victory of the King of the North.
Zvinozonanganisana nekuhwina kuri external kwaKing of the North.
And it also lines up with 31 BC.
Zvonangana zvakare na31 BC.
Which is the death of the South, according to Daniel 8:9.
Kunova kufa kweSouth maererano naDaniel 8 ndima ya9.
Does all that make sense so far?
Izvi zviri kumeka sense here?
I have the question on that point, Aaron.
Ndine mubvunzo panyaya iyoyo, Aaron.
Confirm, do you hear me?
Uri kundinzwa here?
If you're in the Shona channel, Aaron won't be able to hear your questions, Jerifanos. You'd need to come out of the channel, or Justina needs to then repeat your question to Aaron in English. Thank you.
Okay. So let me repeat Jerifanos' questions. Jerry, can you start again?
Oh, okay. So can Justina repeat, please?
Okay, you can begin. Jerry, you can start asking your question, then I repeat.
My question is,
So Jerifanos' question is
identifying the King of the North as the Republican Party.
if we are identifying the King of the North as the Republican Party,
And we are identifying the King of the North winning at the Sunday law.
and if we are identifying the King of the North at the Sunday law,
So if victory is winning over who? That is my question.
sorry, can you come again, Jerry?
It's coming because of your mentioning the Russian issue as an internal.
So because you're mentioning the Russian issue internally,
That is my question.
that's the question.
Justina, can you summarize the question for me, please? Didn't really catch.
Okay, I also didn't catch a bit of it as well. So maybe I'll ask Jerifanos to ask it in a summary fashion, then I'll repeat for you. Jerry, can you ask your question in a summary, then I'll repeat it for Aaron. Hello, Jerry.
Maybe you could type it out in the chat, then you could read it.
Okay,
We've lost him.
so Jerifanos, you
It's
can,
okay.
yeah, you can
Thank
type
you.
you can type your question, then we'll read it out.
Carry on. Okay, so it looks like we should be putting the external death of the King of the South at the worldwide Sunday.
Saka zviri kuita ratidzika kuti tinofana kuisa kufa kwaKing of the South externally paworldwide Sunday law.
And then that would match with, I'll say, the death of the King of the South.
Izvi zvinozofanana manje nekufa kwaKing of the South
At 31 BC.
mugore ra31 BC.
Okay, so we said the external victory for the King of the North, external because it's outside of America.
Tati kuwina externally kwaKing of the North. Tiri kuti external nekuti ari kuwina zviri kunze kweAmerica.
Which means the external death of the King of the South should be something outside of Russia.
Zvoreva kuti kufa zviri kunze kwaKing of the South zvinofanira kunge chiri chinhu chiri kunze kweRussia.
And I'm going to say that that's Ukraine.
Ndichataura ndoti iyi ndiyo Ukraine.
Okay, so internal death Navalny, external death Ukraine.
Saka internal death tiri kuti Navalny, external death tobva tati Ukraine.
And now I'll go back to Liberty's question.
Ndodzokera pamubvunzo wabvunzwa naLiberty.
Why is it Ukraine and not all the proxies in the Middle East?
Sei iri Ukraine asiri mamwe maproxy ese ariko kuMiddle East.
Because around October, November, December,
Nekuti kunana October, November, December.
Hamas, Hezbollah were completely finished.
Hamas neHezbollah zvakatoparadzwa zvachose.
And these are all proxies of the King of the South, Russia.
Esaya aiva maproxy King of the South inova Russia.
Assad fled Damascus at the beginning of December.
Kutanga kwaDecember, Assad akatizawo Damascus.
And end of October, 27th, I think.
Kupera kwaOctober, ndofunga kuti musi wa27.
Israel flew jets into Iranian airspace.
Israel yakaflya majets ayo achienda muairspace yekuIran.
And destroyed all the Iranian air defenses.
Ikaparadza air defense eIran ese.
And they didn't lose a single jet or a single pilot. They were unchallenged.
Havana kurasikirwa nejet imwe chete kana pilot imwe chete, havana kugona kuchallenjeka.
And the Houthis have never been a realistic or serious threat to Israel.
Havana kumbobvira vakaita threat yakanyanya kuIsrael. To Israel. You said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Israel's an American proxy.
Israel iproxy yevanhu vekuAmerica.
And I've taught that was the death of the King of the South at November 5th, which is wrong.
Izvi ndakambodzidzisa kuti ndokwaiva kufa kwaKing of the South pana November 5. Zvinova izvo zvaiva wrong.
And this is another reason why I switched to July 18th.
Ndo imwe mhaka ndakazoshanduka ndaakuJuly 18.
Something that Elder Parminda taught 10 or 12 years ago, I don't remember.
Chinhu chakambodzidziswa naElder Parminda pamwe makore anoita 10 kana 12 apfuura.
Is that during the Cold War,
Kuti paiitika Cold War,
you had two theatres back then as well.
Paiva nematheatre maviriwo kare ikoko zvakare.
You had the Middle East.
Kwaiva neveMiddle East.
Typically, we identify the war in Afghanistan. We single that out.
Isusu tinowanzokutaura nezvehondo ikuAfghanistan, tinotaura zvakanyanya nezvayo.
And then you had the European theatre.
Kwakazovawo netheatre yeve kuEurope.
So same as today, Middle East proxies and European proxies.
Zvangofanana nezvazviriko nhasi, maproxy ekuMiddle East nemaproxy ekuEurope.
And the war in Afghanistan was won in 1989.
Hondo yekuAfghanistan vakaihwina muna 1989.
But the King of the South didn't die until 1991.
Asi King of the South haana kufa kuzosvikira muna 1991.
And it was the European theatre that actually killed the King of the South.
Ndiyo theatre yeve kuEurope yakazotouraya King of the South.
So again, it's going to be the European theatre, Ukraine, that actually kills the King of the South.
Saka zvakare panenge pari paEuropean theatre yeUkraine ichazourayisa King of the South.
So we said that the external would be the complete death.
Saka tate external ndo ine complete death King of the South.
Okay, any thoughts, questions on that?
Okay, so Jerry Fanos has posted his question in the chat.
Go ahead. Oh, I can read that.
Yeah.
Oh, so simply the King of the North or the Republican Party is fighting who in the internal story?
Okay, saka King of the North kana kuti Republican Party iri kurwisana nani mustori iri internal?
It's quite new to me.
Zvichiri zvitsva kwandiri.
So you need to check with what elders Terry and Parminda have taught very recently.
So unofana kumbocheka nezvazviri kudzidziswa naElder Terry naElder Parminda manje.
So, good question.
Mubvunzo wakanaka.
I would say it's the Democratic Party.
Ndirini ndinoti iparty yemademocrats.
I'm wondering if you can say the institutions, maybe? Any thoughts from anyone?
Pamwe munhu anogona kuti ma-institutions. Hameno kana paine vane dzimwe pfungwawo.
Is that correct as everyone else understands it?
Ndizvo here ndokunzwisisa kunoita mumwe munhu wese here.
I want to try.
Albert ada kuzama.
I think from the line we can get glimpses into answering the question. For me,
Anzi kubva muline racho tinogona kuona zvidimbu
that the king of the
mukupindura
north
mubvunzo.
is faced with three enemies.
Kuti king of the north anotarisana nemaenemy matatu.
First, the east, the
Kunotanga
pleasant land,
east, koita pleasant
and the
land,
south.
kozoita vekusouth.
So looking into our history, we can see that the king of the north, born in 1989,
Tichitarisa munhoroondo yedu tinogona kuona kuti king
has
of
to
the
take
north
down the glorious land.
achizvarwa muna 1989 anofana kudhiridza glorious land.
And we have seen the complexity of having the king of the north itself being America,
Taona complexity yekunge tiina king of the north
and glorious land
iri America,
itself being America as well.
glorious land zvakare iri America.
Regardless of that complexity,
Zvisinei necomplexity iyoyo,
the king of the north is fighting against the glorious land internally.
king of the north ari kurwisa glorious land mukati.
So whatever that may mean, these are two separate, I would call them institutions
Saka zvisinei nekuti zvinorevei aya ma-institution maviri
within the
akasiyana
United States of America.
mukati me-United States of America.
So we've identified the king of the north as the Republican Party,
Saka tati isusu king of the north ndiyo Republican
and
Party,
whoever or whatever is against the agenda of the Republican Party in America
uyo anenge ari against agenda ye-king of the north muamerica
is that entity the king of the north is fighting against.
ndivo vanhu vari kurwisaniswa navo naking of the north.
Thank you.
Maita basa.
Should I repeat that?
Yes, please, because people who are not in the Shona channel wouldn't have heard anything.
Okay, let me first check. I think that was Liberty. Does that mean you're agreeing with me that the King of the North is fighting the Democratic Party, the institution?
Saka uri kubvumirana neni kuti king of the north ari kurwisanisa
I agree.
ne-democratic party institution. Ati ndobvumirana nazvo.
I think I heard him say he does agree. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I
So,
think I'm following the lady.
Liberty was saying, answering the question, who's the King of the North fighting on the internal victory?
Tiri kutaura
And
kuti king of the
agree.
north ari kurwisana nani mukati kuinternal victory.
And he's agreeing that the King of the North, the Republican Party,
Ari kubvuma kuti king of the north Republican Party
are fighting the Democratic Party.
vari kurwisanisana nepati yedemocrat.
And then he went into something I mentioned earlier when I first wrote this up.
Azoenda mune zvandambotaura kare pandatanga kunyora.
How does the King of the North America
King of the north inova iyo America
overthrow the glorious land America?
ino-overthrowa sei glorious land America.
And basically it's a fight between the Republicans and the Democrats.
Ma-Republicans nema-Democrats.
Okay, anything else? I don't usually keep an eye on the chat, so I suppose I should though.
Okay, so there's 2 comments in the chat.
Okay, I'll read them. what is Ukraine in the fall of the king of the south?
Human
So we'll go
arikubvunza
into
kuti
that now.
Ukraine chii mukudonha kwaking of the south zvikanzi ndo zvataakuita izvezvi.
Someone else says, I think it's the established democratic institutions they are fighting. Yes, I think that's correct.
Natasha ari kuti ndofunga ma-established democratic institutions avari kurwisana nawo zvikanzi ndizvozvo.
Okay, let me check my notes, and it's a good time to shout out if you have anything.
Kana muchida muchine zvamunoda kutaura mugona kutaura futi nguva yakanaka ndichicheka manotsi angu.
Okay, so we've said the external and complete death of the king of the south will be to do with the war in Ukraine.
Saka tati kufa zvachose kwaking of the south ndiyo kune kuri kwehondo yekuukraine.
So at the moment you see Trump dictating the terms of the peace deal.
Saka izvezvi tinoona Trump achidictator kuti peace deal ichaitwa nemutoo upi.
You saw what happened to Zelensky and Ukraine when Zelensky disagreed with Trump in the White House.
Makaona zvakaitwa kuna Zelensky paakapikisana naTrump muWhite House.
Trump immediately cut off military aid to Ukraine.
Ipapo Trump akabva atokata military aid kuti isaenda kuUkraine.
I think there was something else, I can't remember. But anyway, Trump uses a carrot and a stick.
Pane zvimwe zvakaitwa asi handicharangarira, asi Trump anoshandisa carrot nechimuti.
So the king of the north is leading out, is dominant in this peace deal.
Saka king of the north ndiye ari kutungamirira munhoroondo iyi.
We might get to see what the king of the north does to the king of the south if Putin disagrees with Trump.
Tinogona kuzoona kuti king of the north anoitei kuna king of the south kana Putin akarambirana naye Trump.
So when the peace deal is actually enacted and the Ukraine war ends,
Peace deal painenge yatozoitwa hondo yeUkraine yopera,
that will be Putin agreeing to Trump's demands.
ndo patinenge tichiti Putin anenge azobvumirana nezvinenge zvichidiwa naTrump.
In other words, stronger language, that's Putin bowing to Trump.
Nedzimwe nzira nekutaura kwakasimba ndiPutin anenge achipfugamira Trump.
So there's a victory for the king of the north, in other words, a defeat for the king of the south.
Saka pane kuwina kwaking of the north nedzimwe nzira kukundwa kwaking of the south.
Trump is offering Putin a way out of this quagmire.
Trump ari kuti kuna Putin ndine nzira yekuti unogona kubuda musituation yauri mairi iyi.
So Putin really needs Trump. That's the balance of power.
Saka Putin anotonida Trump, ndo zviripo.
Zelensky or Ukraine need Trump for the same reason.
Zelensky kana kuti Ukraine vanotonidawo Trump nereason yakafanana iyoyo.
Even to the point where they are being asked to sign over 50% of their mineral rights to America.
Kutosvikira pakuti vari kutonzi vavape maminerals anotokwana kusvika kunana 50% enyika yavo.
I'm not sure I explained that very well. Does that make sense? That would be the end of the Ukraine war would be the death of the king of the south.
Handisi kuti hazvitsanangura chaizvo here kuti kupera kwehondo yeUkraine ndo kunenge kuri kufa kwaking of the south.
I think so, Aaron.
Hanzi ndinoona sokudaro.
Okay. Someone says they think they can see that. Okay, so to understand the model or the structure of the war in Ukraine.
Saka kunzwisisa model kana structure yehondo yeku-Ukraine.
The person I think that's done the most work on that
Munhu akaita basa rakanyanya chaizvo panyaya iyoyo
is Aryan.
ndiAryan.
So I won't draw out his entire structure, his line.
Saka handichadrowi structure yake yese kana line rake rese.
But what Aryan says
Asi zvinotaurwa naAryan
is that you put the Ukraine war here at the National Sunday Law.
kuti unoisa hondo yeUkraine pano apo paNational Sunday Law.
So he's not in agreement that it's July 18.
Saka haasi mukutenderana kuti iJuly 18.
Aryan is saying that the National Sunday Law
Aryan ari kuti National Sunday Law
began in February of
yakatanga
2025.
muna February 2025.
And it will end at some point, at some stage of this peace deal.
Ichizonogumawo pane chimwe chinhano munhoroondo iyi.
I just said loosely the end of the Ukraine war.
Indangotaurawo zviri loose ndichiti magumo ehondo yeUkraine.
But I don't know if it's going to be the day the peace deal is signed or when there's actually a ceasefire or when the war actually ends. There's different stages to the peace deal.
Handizozivi kuti ndipo panosainwa peace deal here kana kuti musi unoitwa ceasefire kana kuti papi chaipo pane mastage akasiyana siyana panyaya yacho.
So Aryan is saying he's not too sure which stage of the peace deal his National Sunday Law will end.
Saka Aryan ari kuti haanyatsi kuziva kuti stage ipi yepeace deal inopera Sunday Law yake.
But what Elder Terry asked Aryan when she presented to the Netherlands,
Asi Elder Terry pavakapresenta kuNetherlands zvavakamubvunza iye Aryan,
she said something like, don't you think you found this waymark here?
Sorry, can you come again?
Elder Terry said to Aryan,
Elder Terry vakati kuna Aryan,
the end of the Ukraine war,
magumo ehondo yeUkraine.
you, Aryan, you're saying it's the National Sunday Law.
Iwe Aryan uri kuti ndiyo National Sunday Law.
But don't you think that you've actually found the worldwide Sunday Law waymark?
Asi hausi kufunga here kuti watowana iwewe waymark re-worldwide Sunday Law?
First witness is you've seen how we've put the external death of the King of the South here.
Witness yekutanga ndeyekuti waona kuti taisa external death yaKing of the South sei apa.
Ukraine is external to Russia.
Ukraine iri external kuRussia.
I think it's the second witness that during the Cold War, it was the European front that killed the King of the South.
Ndofunga umwe witness ndeyekuti Europe muCold War pakufa kwaKing of the South.
I'll draw it in. I think it's correct to say that is a witness.
Ndichazvinyora, ndofunga kuti zviri correct kuiisa iri witness.
And whether this is the second or the third witness,
Iyi pamwe inenge iri witness yechipiri kana yechitatu.
it's the South, or I'll say the King of the South,
Saka iSouth kana kuti King of the South,
which is killed here.
inourawa pano apa.
Daniel 12:1.
Pana Daniel 12 ndima ya1.
Paralleling it with Daniel 8:9.
Zvichiitwa parallel na Daniel 8 ndima ya9.
Any thoughts? I think I'm done.
Pana nedzimwe pfungwa here? Ndofunga kuti ndapedza.
Hello? I just want to confirm something.
Ndoda
There
kungokonfirma
is
chimwe
something
chinhu.
you mentioned about the specific dynamics of the war in Ukraine.
Pane chawataura chemadynamics ari specific ehondo yekuukraine.
And you were comparing or contrasting that to the losses I mentioned earlier of the Middle Eastern spheres of influence.
Wanga uchizvifananidza kana kusiyanisa nemaloss andambotaura mumashure
You said,
ema-influence ekumiddle
not
east.
today, that Russia has gained some land in Ukraine.
Wakati iwewe Russia yakawina land kuUkraine, but not nhasi.
And it looks like not a loss.
Zvinoratidzika kunge isiri kurasikirwa.
Does that point still stand, considering what you have just said now?
Pfungwa iyi ichiriko here tichifunga zvawataura izvezvi?
Is the final nail to the coffin of Russia.
Kuti Ukraine ndiyo chipikiri chekupedzisira kucoffin yeRussia.
I didn't hear you very well, Lucy, and I'm going to repeat it anyway. You can check if I'm correct.
Haana kunyatsokuzvinzwa saka achadzokorodza.
When I was teaching November 5th,
pandaidzidzisa November 5,
my argument against Aryan
argument yangu against Aryan
is something that Elder Tess said.
Zvinhu zvakataurwa naElder Tess.
She said that she thinks the death of the King of the South, which she placed that National Sunday,
Vanofunga kuti kufa kwaKing of the South kwavanoisa ivo paSunday law.
don't expect it to look like 1991, complete collapse of Russia.
Musatarisira kuti kunoratidzika kunge 1991 kudirika zvachose kweRussia.
She said they'll probably just lose a proxy.
Vakati havanogona kungorasikirwa neproxy.
And my argument against Aryan's position
Argument yangu inenge iri against position yeAryan
is if you have Russia here,
ndeyekuti kana uine Russia pano apa
and you've got Ukraine here,
uine Ukraine pano apa,
and if Russia takes a bit of Ukraine and keeps it for the peace deal,
Russia ikatora Ukraine yoichengeta kuitira peace deal,
then they don't lose a proxy.
havarasikirwi neproxy.
They actually gain 1/5 of the land of Ukraine.
Vanotogena 1/5 yenyika yeUkraine.
Gain 1/5 of a proxy. That was my argument. Does the argument make sense?
Vanogena 1/5 yeproxy iyoyo ndo yaiva argument yangu.
Well, very well it does.
Hanzi inomake sense.
Doesn't make sense. What does?
He said it does.
So that was my argument against Aryan's position.
Ndo yaiva argument yangu paposition yaAryan.
So what I
May you come again, please?
So what I did was just take one comment by Elder Tess.
Zvandakazoita ndakatora comment imwe chete yaElder Tess.
Where she just said the word probably.
Pavakangotaura vara rekuti probably.
She wasn't using parable methodology.
Vaisashandisa methodology yemaparable.
She was just using her own common sense.
Vaingoshandisawo common sense dzavo.
But when I was reminded of Elder Parminder's model,
asi pandakazorangaridzwa nemodel iya yaElder Parminder.
First Middle East, Afghanistan, 1989.
Kutanga Middle East, Afghanistan, 1989.
Then Europe, 1991.
Kozotevera Europe, 1991.
Which actually kills the King of the South.
Ndiyo inouraya King of the South.
There you have an actual model or a structure.
then unenge waane model kana structure.
Repeat of history, parable methodology.
Kutsokorodza kwenhoroondo, parable methodology.
Which is so much stronger than just, I'll say, Tess had a hunch. A hunch, guess.
Zvinovawo zvakasimba than kungoti Tess akanga akangorerekera kwazviri izvo.
Does that make sense?
Zvinomeka sense here.
And these are all the collective reasons November the 5th. I knew it would just collapse, so I switched.
Ndo mareasons ese ekudirika King of the South. Those are ndo anga ari mareasons.
Okay, I'm done. Any thoughts, any questions? Did everyone understand?
Aaron apedza, hanzi munhu wese anzwisisa here? Pane pfungwa here kana zvimwe? There's comments in the chat.
Probably this will be my last one.
Before we go to you, Liberty, there's people who typed in the chat maybe.
Fabius, Maximus, Gedges. Do you now agree on the usage of that name to the timing of the Sunday law? Yes or no?
Fabius, Maximus, Gedges, unotenderana nekushandiswa kwezita iroro patiming yeSunday law here? Waakutenderana nazvo here?
So the question is,
Saka mubvunzo ndewekuti,
do I now agree on the timing and application of Quintus?
Saka ndakubvumirana netiming neapplication yaQuintus here? Hanzi hongu.
I'm confident we can figure that out.
Ndine confidence yekuti tinogona kuzvi-figure out izvozvo.
And I'm just going to leave that for Elder Terry to figure it out one day, and I'm sure she'll present that.
Ndichangosiyira Elder Terry kuti vagozviita figure out rimwe zuva, vachazvipresentawo, izvi ndiri okay nazvo. So there are comments in the chat.
Did I already cover this one? What is the role of the evangelicals in the fall of democracy in the US? Evangelicals, the fall of democracy in the US. If the USA is fighting against itself, what or who is the king of the South? And what or who will be the king of the North? Okay, do you want to translate that question?
Would you want to read it out maybe for the recording clearly? If
Sure.
it's okay. Yeah.
Of course. So first part, what is the role of the evangelicals in the fall of democracy in the USA?
Saka anzi basa rema-evangelicals mukudonha kwedemocracy mu-USA nderipi?
Okay, so to answer that one, my understanding of that hasn't actually changed.
Kunzwisisa izvozvo, kunzwisisa kwandinoita izvozvo hakusati kwachinja.
I don't know if Elder Terry or Elder Paminda might have presented some sort of change, tweaked it.
Handizivi kuti Elder Terry kana Elder Paminda vanenge vakamboitawo kakuchinja here, but handizivi.
But I still understand that the King of the North is church over state.
May you come again?
I still understand that the King of the North is church over state.
Okay. Ndichiri kunzwisisa kuti King of the North is church over state.
So I'm still thinking that Trump is doing exactly what the evangelicals want.
Saka ndichiri kungofunga kuti Trump ari kuita exactly zviri kudiwa nema-evangelicals.
Trump still knows that they are his base, you should say, main voters.
Trump anoziva kuti base rake.
Second part of the question.
Part yechipiri yemubvunzo.
If the USA is fighting against itself,
kana USA iri kuzvirwisanisa pachezvayo,
who or what is the king of the south?
Ndiani kana kuti chii chiri king of the south?
And who or what is the king of the north?
And then ndiani kana kuti chii chiri king of the north?
Okay, so the king of the south is Russia, Putin.
King of the south ndiyo Russia, Putin.
And the king of the north is specifically the Republican Party, Trumpism.
King of the north ndiyo Republican Party, Trumpism.
Okay, does that answer that question?
Zvinopindura mubvunzo iwoyo here?
Okay, then the next question.
Mubvunzo unotevera.
If the king of the north is fighting Democratic Party,
Kana king of the north ari kurwisanisana neDemocratic Party,
is it that the Democratic Party is the sixth kingdom?
hazvisizvo here kuti Democratic Party ndiyo kingdom yechi6?
So this is quite new to me,
Kwandiri izvi zvitsva,
but yes, I think that's correct.
asi hongu ndofunga kuti ndizvozvo.
And I'll refer you to Elder Paminder's very latest studies.
Ndichakuti munoona zvidzidzo zvakaitwa naElder Paminda zvemanje manje.
Where he parallels 1798 with 1989.
Pavanonanganisa 1798 na1989.
And yes, he takes the sixth kingdom from 1798.
Vanotora kingdom yechi6 kubva ku1798.
When he does line upon line,
Woita line upon line,
he drops the sixth kingdom to, I'll say, before 1989.
sixth kingdom woisa before 1989.
And in the literal story of the king of the north, Babylon,
Mustori iri literal ya king of the north ya Babylon.
okay, let me not get into that, don't worry. Sorry, scrap that idea. I'm not confident enough to explain.
Handisandane confidence yekutsanangura izvi.
Okay, second part of this question, I think.
Pati yechipiri yemubvunzo.
After winning at Panium, Antiochus was worried about the looming conflict with Rome.
Mushure mekuhwina Panium, Antiochus akanga ari worried nehondo yeRome yanga yakamirira.
So I think you're saying, is that a conflict with the Republicans?
Saka uri kuti iwewe ndiyo hondo here nemaRepublican.
So Antiochus is the king of the north, Panium, isn't he?
Antiochus ndiye king of the north here ndiye.
Worried about a looming conflict with Rome.
Anenge ari worried nehondo inenge yakuda kuitika neRome.
I'm just going to say I don't know, sorry.
Ndichangoti handizivi.
Sorry, I don't know. I'm just going to have to move on. My apologies.
Handizivi, ndine urombo, handizivi.
Okay, so someone's hit the nail on the head.
Pane azotaura zvakare.
So does it mean when Putin agrees to the peace deal, we mark close of probation, Daniel 12?
Saka zvoreva here kuti Putin paanobvumirana nepeace deal tinobva tamaka kuvharwa kwemutsa.
I'm going to say yes, but with a caveat.
Ndichangoti hongu asi ndiri careful zvangu.
It seems like we're not sure what stage of the peace deal.
Zvinoita kunge hatisati takuziva kuti istage ipi yepeace deal.
And I don't even know enough about history and politics.
Ina handitonyatsi kuziva zvizere nezvenhoroondo nepolitics.
To say how fast these different stages occur.
Kuti mastage aya ari different anoitika nekukasika zvakadii.
At the moment, it seems like they're just coming to the table.
panguva ino zviri kuita kunge vari kungouya patafura.
Okay, so we know we're not at Daniel 12:1 now.
Satoziva kuti hatisiri paDaniel 12:1. Hatisati paDaniel 12:1 izvezvi.
It seems like now they're going to start negotiating terms or conditions for a ceasefire.
Zvinoita sekunge zvinezvi vakutanga kunegotiata ma-terms nema-conditions e-ceasefire.
Then I guess they would basically go through different negotiations of how to end the war.
Vozotaurawo ma-negotiation akasiyana-siyana ekuti tohwina sei hondo.
And then the war would end.
Hondo iyi ichizoperawo.
So I don't know which stage would be Daniel 12:1.
Saka handizivi kuti istage ipi inenge iri Daniel 12:1.
All I do know is that it's much sooner than I ever imagined.
Chandoziva ndechekuti zviri kuitika nekukasika than zvandaizombofungira.
Don't do what I do.
Musaita zvandinoita.
And use guesswork methodology.
Mongoshandisawo methodology yefembera-fembera.
But my best guess is that the Ukraine war could actually end this year, within 1 year maybe.
Kufembera kwangu ndekuti hondo yeUkraine inogona kutopera zvayo mugore rino, mu 1 year ndofunga.
So I'm guessing or imagining Daniel 12:1 maybe at the end of this year, something like that.
Saka ini ndiri kufembera ndichiimagina Daniel 12:1 kumagumo egore rino, zvinhu zvakada kudaro.
Has that scared you as much as it scared me?
Zvakutyisidzira here sekutyisidzira kwazvakandiita? Yes, of course.
I thought to myself, oh, I better start behaving.
Ndakafunga kuti regai nditange kubehave.
Someone says when they say peace and safety, it will be fulfilled.
Mati pavanoti peace and safety. Zvinenge zvasadzikiswa.
Yes, someone else says also, it reminds me of when they say,
Mati zvinondirangaridza nepavanotaura.
For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them.
Pavanoti peace nesafety, then kuparadzwa kuri podyo kuchabva kwangouya kwavari.
Okay. Anything else?
Pane zvimwe here zvakare?
If not, I think we can close.
Kana pasisina tinogona kuvhara hedu.
Okay, let's close in prayer.
Okay, ngativharei mumunamato.
Almighty God in heaven,
Mwari wedu watsvene kudenga,
we see the way you have led us in the past.
tinoona nzira iyo makatitungamirira kumashure.
And if we remember that,
Kana tichirangarira izvozvo,
we know we have nothing to fear for the future.
tinoziva kuti hatina chekutya kune zviri kumberi.
We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name.
Tinokutendai Mwari muzita raJesu. Amen.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Maita basa munhu wese, iri nguva yakanaka.